The offer sounded insane. $40,000. For 30 days. One signature. One fake marriage. And absolutely no emotions involved. Daniel Reed stared at the woman sitting across from him, convinced this had to be some kind of joke. But she wasn't smiling. In fact, she looked irritated that he hadn't answered yet. Well, she asked calmly. Daniel blinked once. You're serious? Very. That was the first shift. Because rich people sometimes said crazy things like they were discussing the weather. The cafe around them buzzed with normal life. Coffee machines, muted conversations, rain tapping softly against the windows. But at their table, reality felt disconnected from everything else. Daniel looked again at the contract in front of him. $40,000. Temporary legal marriage. Public appearances required. Confidentiality agreement included. This can't be legal, he muttered. It is. And why exactly would a billionaire need to hire a husband? The woman leaned back slightly. Because my grandfather is dying. That answer landed harder than expected. Her expression didn't change, but something behind her eyes did. That was the second shift. My family owns one of the largest real estate companies in the country, she continued. My grandfather built it. Daniel stayed quiet. He also believes family stability matters more than business skill. And according to his will, she paused, I inherit control of the company only if I'm married. Daniel almost laughed. You're kidding. I wish I were. So marry your boyfriend. I don't have one. Convenient. I don't have time for relationships. That sounds like a you problem. For the first time, the corner of her mouth twitched slightly. Almost amused. My assistant said you were difficult, she said. You investigated me. I investigate everyone. That was the third shift. Because suddenly Daniel realized this meeting wasn't random. She had chosen him. Specifically. Why me? He asked carefully. The woman glanced toward the window. You're invisible. Daniel frowned immediately. That's supposed to convince me. You have no criminal record. No public scandals. Stable job. Stable routine. Still insulting. You're also a single father. That changed the air instantly. Daniel's expression hardened slightly. What does my daughter have to do with this? Nothing. She replied quickly. Actually, that's part of why I chose you. He didn't like the sound of that. I need someone who understands responsibility, she said calmly. Not someone chasing attention. Daniel folded his arms. You talk like this as a business merger. That's because it is. That was the fourth shift. Because she truly meant it. No romance. No feelings. Just strategy. Daniel should have walked away. Any sane person would have. But then he thought about Lily. Her school tuition. The overdue rent notice sitting in his kitchen drawer. The second job he secretly started because one income wasn't enough anymore. $40,000 could change everything. The billionaire woman watched him silently. Like she already knew he was considering it. What's your daughter's name? She asked suddenly. Daniel hesitated. Lily. How old? 7. A strange softness crossed her face. Gone almost instantly. That's a good age, she said quietly. That was the fifth shift. Because for the first time, she sounded human. 3 days later, Daniel stood inside the largest penthouse he had ever seen. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooked the city like something from a movie. Everything smelled expensive, even the silence. You'll stay here during the arrangement, the billionaire woman explained. Daniel looked around slowly. This place is bigger than my apartment building. That's not difficult. He glanced at her. You always talk like that. Like what? Like emotions or inconveniences. She didn't answer immediately. Then, yes, that answer felt too honest. Her name was Victoria Hale. 32. CEO. Cold enough to freeze conversations. Beautiful in a way that didn't feel approachable. And apparently now, his temporary wife. That alone would have been strange enough. But then Lily arrived, and everything changed. That was the sixth shift. Lily stepped into the penthouse holding her small backpack. Then stopped completely. Whoa. Daniel almost smiled. Victoria stood nearby awkwardly, like she had no idea what children were supposed to do. Lily looked up at her curiously. Are you rich? Daniel closed his eyes immediately. Lily. What? She whispered loudly. Victoria surprised him. She laughed. A real laugh. Short. Unexpected. Yes, Victoria admitted. I suppose I am. That was the seventh shift. Because Daniel suddenly realized something terrifying. His daughter wasn't intimidated by her at all. Over the next week, the arrangement stayed simple. Public dinners, business events, pretending to be happily married. Victoria handled cameras perfectly. Daniel hated every second of them. But Lily adapted too quickly. One evening, Daniel walked into the living room and froze. Victoria sat on the floor beside Lily. Doing a puzzle. That alone felt impossible. You're cheating, Lily accused. Victoria looked offended. I'm winning strategically. That means cheating. It absolutely does not. Daniel stared silently. Victoria noticed him, and for the first time since meeting her, she looked embarrassed. That was the eighth shift. Later that night, Daniel found her alone on the balcony. The city lights reflected in the glass around her. You're good with her, he admitted. Victoria didn't look at him. No, she said quietly. I'm not. She likes you. That's different. Silence settled between them. Then she asked something unexpected. What happened to Lily's mother? Daniel's jaw tightened slightly. She left. Victoria finally looked at him. That's all. That's enough. To his surprise, she nodded slowly. Like she understood more than he said. That was the ninth shift. Days later came the family dinner. The important one. The reason this entire fake marriage existed. Victoria's grandfather sat at the head of the massive table, thinner than Daniel expected but far sharper. His eyes immediately locked onto Daniel. So, the old man said calmly, you're the husband. Daniel nodded carefully. Sir. And the child? Mine, Daniel answered. The old man looked toward Lily. And smiled. That smile mattered. More than anyone realized. That was the 10th shift. Dinner went surprisingly well. Until Victoria's cousin arrived late. Ethan Hale. The kind of man who smiled without warmth. He looked Daniel up and down once. Then laughed softly. This is the husband? He asked. Victoria's expression cooled instantly. Yes. Ethan smirked. Interesting choice. Daniel ignored him. But Lily didn't. You smell mean, she announced. Complete silence. Victoria nearly choked on her drink. Daniel closed his eyes again. Not again. But Ethan's smile disappeared immediately. That was the 11th shift. Because suddenly the room shifted around Lily. Not because she insulted him. But because she saw through him instantly. After dinner, Victoria's grandfather called Daniel into his study alone. You love her? The old man asked directly. Daniel froze. This was dangerous territory. Before he could answer, the old man smiled faintly. You hesitated, he said. Daniel's stomach tightened. I care about her, not what I asked. Silence. Then unexpectedly, you protect her, the old man continued. That matters. More. Daniel blinked. What? The old man leaned back slowly. My granddaughter built walls around herself years ago, he said quietly. But your daughter walks through them like they don't exist. That hit harder than expected. Because it was true. Over the next few weeks, something impossible started happening. The fake marriage stopped feeling fake. Victoria smiled more. The penthouse felt warmer. And Daniel caught himself watching her differently. That terrified him. Because this arrangement had rules. No emotions. No attachment. No future. Then came the final twist. Daniel woke one night to voices downstairs. Sharp voices. Arguing. He moved quietly toward the staircase. And froze. Victoria stood near the kitchen. Crying. Not graceful tears. Not controlled tears. Real ones. Across from her stood Ethan. You think he actually loves you? Ethan mocked quietly. He's being paid. Daniel's chest tightened instantly. Victoria's expression hardened. He's more real than anyone in this family. Ethan laughed. Then tell him the truth. Silence. Heavy silence. Daniel stepped closer slowly. What truth? Victoria turned, and the look on her face told him everything before she even spoke. That was the 12th shift. I can't have children, she whispered. The room went still. Daniel stared at her. Victoria looked away immediately. That's why my grandfather wanted me married, she said quietly. He thought maybe family would soften me before he dies. The pain in her voice felt too raw to fake. And Lily, she continued carefully, she made this place feel alive. Daniel didn't know what to say. Because suddenly, this was no longer a contract. No longer a performance. No longer $40,000. It was loneliness, her loneliness, and somehow, his daughter had reached the part of her nobody else could. Then Lily's sleepy voice appeared from the hallway. "Why's everybody sad?" Victoria wiped her eyes instantly. But Lily walked directly to her anyway. Then hugged her without hesitation. Small arms, simple gesture, but devastatingly real, and in that moment, the billionaire who paid a stranger to pretend to be her husband realized the one thing she never planned for. Was falling in love with the life she thought she could only borrow for 30 days. If this story touched your heart, don't forget to like, subscribe, and become part of Whispered Love. Because here, every story has a secret, and every silence hides a feeling. See you in the next story.
Hey there. Subscribe to my channel. And also press this bell icon.